Well, I'm sure a whole lot of us been there. It was a dark and windless and moonless night, and the car broke down beside the road, or you had a flat tire and nobody was with you, and you didn't have a flashlight, and you had to change it all alone in the darkness. Well, I can't help you about to being all alone, but here's a little project that may save you from having that dark time working on the engine or trying to change the tire. I started cleaning up the attic and ran across a couple of old halogen fixtures and then thought, well, might have another use for these. I can't use them as halogens anymore for reasons we'll see shortly, but maybe I could convert them to something else. This particular case was very solid, had a sealed gasket on the front of it, and was virtually indestructible except for breaking the glass. I've been aiming to go ahead and put some kind of a troubleshooting light in the car just in case I had a vehicle breakdown. At least I'd have some light, especially if I didn't have anybody with me. As most of us remember, halogens give off excellent light, but they also give off a lot of heat. And one's been on for a while. You can pretty well count on getting a burn if you snuggle up against it accidentally. Well, as you can see here, it wasn't a matter of destroying a perfectly good halogen fixture. The bulb holder was burned, and indeed, the actual wire had burned off one end of the bulb holder. Now it's time to start finding all the parts to make this happen. First on my list was the LEDs. Second on my list was something to hold the LEDs in the fixture. In my case, the LEDs came from eBay, and the general description of those LEDs is in this video description. I highly recommend you buy the LEDs with the pre-adhesive backing on the LEDs. It makes it much easier to mount them to the backing material. Now, as far as the backing material, I'm sure most of us have seen this. If you ever had a yard sign in your yard, I'm sure you've probably both seen and or used this. It's widely available. Hardware stores, Lowe's, and Home Depot all have it. Now it's time to try to figure out how to mount the LEDs and the backing material in the existing fixture. In this case, as you can see, I've taken a piece of that, I'm going to call it sign board, since that's mainly what it's used for, and cut it to size to fit exactly in the fixture. As you can see here, my next step was to modify the existing fixture slightly, trimming back on the inside four corners to about 1/4 of an inch so the board would recess into the fixture and the lights would clear the glass. Now I'm going to skip ahead a couple steps, since I'm pretty sure most of you don't want to watch me just solder LEDs. Now for a few tips. First one is take a sharp knife and cut the LED bubble where you want to cut the LEDs. Now, while a good sharp pair of kitchen scissors will definitely cut the LEDs all the way through, you don't want to do it that way. The best way to do it is to cut halfway through from each side, and then let the final cut on the opposite side join up underneath the LED bubble. That way you get a straight cut. If you try to cut the LEDs all the way across, you'll definitely pull the cut and you won't get a straight cut across the LEDs. Note that you can only cut the LEDs at prearranged cutting locations. In my case, they're about 1.5 inches apart. This depends on the specific LEDs that you're buying as to how far this distance will be. The next tip is to use an even number of strips. For the most part, this makes the wiring easier. You want to pair your grounds and pair your hots. Again, this makes the wiring so much easier. I found it was also much easier to wire if you put the hot on one side and the ground on the other side. You want to make sure the hots are paired internally and the grounds, of course, finish out on the outsides. That way, if your ground touches the fixture, it's not going to matter. You definitely don't want to have the hot side touching the fixture. You'll also note here that I clipped the corners. This allows the backing plate to sit deeper in the fixture without having to modify the fixture that much more. I want to minimize the cutting I did on the light fixture, and this was the easiest way to do it. I used 20 gauge bare solid copper wire to wire mine up. This should be more than enough for the current that I'm anticipating with LEDs. Next on my list of tips is always pre-tin the LEDs where you're going to do your soldering. Make sure you use the lowest possible power on your soldering iron, and it definitely does pay to have something like a variable temperature welder to do this. Finally, on the opposite end where you've installed your wiring headers, always solder together the two common grounds with the two common hots. That way, if you should lose a current path on your initial solder header, you'll have an alternate current path. And here's 3 quick shots of my finished light. I used an 1/8 inch microphone style jack to power mine since I already had this cable made up for another project. I also used 1/4 inch lock line as my mounting adapter. For those not acquainted with lock line, it was originally designed to be an industrial cooling hose for use on machining equipment. It's available on eBay and through McMaster Car. I've widely used it in several of my other projects, and I'll put a couple of cards up above that will show you those cards and those actual applications. I found it to be extremely useful, and unless you mount something pretty heavy on it, it pretty well stay where you put it. My particular light here has a magnetic base for a mount, and in this case I've done this so I could put it on the side of a car or to a heavier mount, which in this case used to be an old speaker magnet. This particular magnet came out of the drive of an old VCR, but magnets like this are widely available on eBay or Amazon. Also, another source is to take them out of an old microwave oven. Microwave ovens have 2 strong magnets on the microwave generator. Here I've got my finished light mounted on the side of a car with a magnet. Note there's a low intensity refrigerator magnet between the main magnet and the car fender. This helps me prevent from scratching the car with the main magnet. And I'm sure somebody said, well, all this is great, but how well does it work? Okay, here's a demo. It's mounted on the car fender and shining down, just like I had to change a spare tire. To be sure, there definitely still is some shadowing using this mounting method, but you definitely could see the lugs and access the lugs. Fairly easy to change the tire. Here's an alternative mounting location using my speaker magnet approach. The unit is mounted on the ground, shining directly at the wheel, and as you can see here, everything is very, very easy to see, and there are no shadows on the lugs. This way everything would be very, very easy to access and change this tire. Well, thanks for watching. Hope you found this video both interesting and useful. If you did, definitely consider giving me a like, and I'd sure appreciate your subscribing if you're interested in these videos. I've got quite a few more on the way with some subjects I'm pretty sure most of you are going to want to see. So, in the interim, take care. Y'all have a great day, and we'll catch you on the next video.